Chapter 285, Monster Isaac. "Who's there?" Arian questioned as he approached the door, the cup still close to his mouth. "It's me, Captain." Arian raised an eyebrow. Lena, the woman with an elf oracle summon that could see future dungeons, time of arrival, and where it was going to appear. She could also see a little more than that, but those were what she mainly saw. The cohort got missions from her. But she wasn't the type to head straight to his house, especially at these early hours. "Lena, what brings you here?" He opened the door. "The cohort won't get through tonight," Lena's ominous words said with a grave face greeted Arian. He was sipping his coffee but had to stop mid-sip. "What did you say?" "Something wants to cause havoc tonight. None from the camp can stop it," Lena told him. "Monsters can't enter paradise. We're sealed off by the watchman's innate skill. So explain to me clearly, what did you see?" Arian frowned. "It's Isaac. He's about to turn into a monster that will kill us all. I see things related to monsters, and I clearly saw Isaac bring down the cohort. He should be thrown out of paradise or killed. Throwing him out will be merciful since he's helped the cohort in the past." Arian held her shoulder. "Calm down, Lena. Have you mentioned this to anyone?" Lena's eyes gleamed. "Does he want to cover this up? I knew Captain Arian wasn't the same man he was before." "I've informed the elders and the watchmen. You are to subdue the threat." Those were their words. "Subdue can mean a lot of things," Arian muttered inwardly. "Let's get to the camp then. I need to speak with the elite class." At the camp, Arian walked on the third mezzanine with Lena behind him. Lots of regulars on the ground floor and lower mezzanines whistled at the sight of him, mischievous smirks on their faces. "Look, boys, the captain came early today. No day off, married man." One of them chortled while the others laughed. Few whistled loudly. "Get out of this ugly place, Captain. We all know you'd prefer the comfort of your wife." "Ha-ha-ha. Some spicy night, wasn't it? When are we expecting the little captain?" Arian shook his head with a light smile. Lena leaned closer and whispered, "They'll all die if you do not take this seriously. Be the man you once were, the Ronin, or witness the downfall of the cohort. Their blood will be on your hands." Arian eyed her. She still talks in an odd fashion. Well, she spent so much time with her summon that she acts and speaks like it. He swung open the metal door, revealing the rectangular meeting hall. All the elites apart from Isaac and Lucy, who had their days off, sat on either side of the large rectangular table. Arian walked past them, occupied the seat meant for the captain, then gestured for Lena to tell them what she told him. "Isaac will turn this camp into a graveyard tonight. I rarely get visions like this, but for the past 2 decades, ever since I was 12 and awakened my summon, none of my visions have been false. I say this knowing you'll doubt. The Isaac we know won't do such a thing. He doesn't even have the strength. So we're talking about possession." Oliver looked at Lena to see if he was right. Lena responded with a nod to the man covered in bandages and a hoodie. "In such a state, the person becomes whatever is controlling them," Thalia added. "We need to treat this matter cautiously and not treat Isaac like he's an enemy all of a sudden." Arden spoke softly while adjusting her gold-rimmed glasses. Others agreed. "I would have loved to not say this, but Isaac is one of Cain's clones. He's a trigger. I see monsters, not people, meaning he's a false human. Technically, a monster made by Cain who has planted a creature capable of wiping out the cohort within him, and that trigger will be activated tonight. I saw it, and so will you." Lena summoned a beautiful tall elf with pointy ears and white medieval clothing with an emerald gemstone pendant. She held a long staff made of white wood. The elf stretched forth her hand. Her eyes became white, and so did the eyes of everyone in the meeting hall. They saw Isaac with spider legs sprouting from his back, releasing hundreds of spiders from his body. They just kept dropping endlessly, and engaged the vagabonds while he perched above, watching them with pitch-black eyes and shoulder-length black hair. That wasn't the Isaac they knew. The spiders piled up the webbed vagabonds into heaps as Isaac descended slowly, hanging on to a web stuck to the ceiling. He opened his mouth, and white mist came from the bodies right into his mouth. That was where the vision stopped. When Lena saw everyone's appalled expressions, she continued, "I've spoken to the watchman and he says Isaac is indeed a clone, unfortunately. Cain has accessed him. The boy called Isaac that fought by your side is gone." If Cain gained control over Isaac, paradise was doomed. The rumors of clones had already haunted them enough, but now they were about to face it. Arian's conflicted expression eventually fell into a resigned one. "Bring him in. Do it gently." "I believe in your prophecies, Lena, but this is horrible. We're going after one of our own," Arden said with saddened eyes. "Is he?" Oliver retorted. Oliver's bandages already told tales of what Cain's influence could do. In Oliver's case, it was his elder brother who became a fanatic and murdered his parents, feeding their summons to his own before burning his own younger brother, leaving black scars that hurt like he was being burned once exposed. Of course, there were people that could heal him, but he didn't want to be healed. These scars would remain until he saw his brother again. Anything that had to do with Cain pissed him off, and Lena had never lied before. Like them, she wanted to defend paradise at all costs. "I'll give him the benefit of doubt first," he whispered to himself as he and Arden left the hall. Isaac would have to be brought in first. Deep, controlled breaths came from Isaac, who was performing a push-up exercise with his mother seated in a meditative pose on his back. "Are you okay?" she asked. He had already crossed 220. It was frightening to her as she feared her son could collapse at any moment. Isaac smirked. "It's nothing. You should eat more. I can barely feel your weight." His mother chuckled. "Why are you at home so often, Isaac? You clearly loved being at the camp training. Be honest with me, is it because Lucy confessed to Percival that she likes him?" Isaac collapsed, his cheek pressed against the floor. "She never did that," he retorted loudly. His mother chuckled at his red face. "I was just teasing you." She rose to her feet. Enough exercise. She strolled toward the kitchen. Isaac turned, lying on his back. The rotating ceiling fan reflected in his bright eyes. "What are we having for breakfast?" He knew the true reason, and it wasn't Lucy. After what happened to Godfrey, he understood that being and building good memories with his loved ones was the best part of living. Godfrey must have felt heartbroken for not being there for Isolde. Isaac knew he had not really paid attention to his mother. All he knew was that she would and should provide since he was her son. But she was also a human being. She could laugh if he joked with her. They bonded over little moments like when she sought his approval over her outfit. They had gone to the market, casual day and night strolls, and watched live shows at the Central Park. Isaac's sweet thoughts collapsed when a hand towel fell on his face. He heard his mother's giggle. "Join me in the kitchen." "What?" Isaac sat up. Even the neighborhood knew his disasters in the kitchen. "We will be cooking together from today. You should learn how to cook. It's an extremely attractive trait for a man." She winked at him. "You honestly stand no chance against that blue-haired friend or yours. He's simply too good-looking and his temperament is a cherry on the top. Cooking will be your advantage. That's how your father caught my eye." She placed one hand on her hip and the other on the kitchen island. "So what are you still doing on your butt?" She widened her eyes deliberately to look aggressive. Isaac slapped his forehead. Maybe he should consider going back to camp. Right then there was a knock on the door. Isaac went, opened and blinked several times at the sight of Arden, standing right outside his door, and Oliver leaning against the pickup truck they came in. "The captain wants to see you. It's urgent," she said softly. Isaac looked at his mother and back at Arden. "As much as I would love to respond to his request, I'm not available. I'm not the strongest around, and I also applied to leave for a while. The captain also signed that I won't be disturbed until my break is over. This isn't a request, Isaac. Oliver's voice rang as he slowly ascended the short staircase. Arden sighed, please follow us. Isaac frowned, what's this about? We'll talk at the camp, Arden replied with a soft, comfortable smile. Isaac exhaled heavily, spoke to his mother and followed them. The moment he entered the pickup truck, Oliver cuffed him with suppressors. Isaac's eyes widened. What are you doing? I hate to break this to you, but you're a clone, and Cain has somehow gained access to you. He's planning to take over your body, destroy the camp, and weaken Paradise. It's best you stay far away from your mother, Oliver replied with a cold gaze. This is bullshit. What a load of crap. Isaac hurled curses with enraged eyes. Get these suppressors off me, he yelled angrily, but Oliver didn't respond. He simply looked out the window. Calm down, Isaac. He's being cautious. We're going to make sure you're safe. We're not your enemies, Arden said as she drove the truck. Almost 30 minutes later, the truck drove down a dusty road with grass on both sides into the tall metal walls of the camp. Arden and Oliver were stunned to see hundreds of regulars gathered out. They were shouting. Wasn't this supposed to be a secret? Oliver muttered. A regular pulled off the door right off its hinges and dragged Isaac outside. One moment he was in the truck, the next he was swallowed by the crowd who launched punches, kicks at him. Some clawed at him, their eyes filled with hate. They weren't seeing Isaac but Cain, the same man whose fanatics had caused them a lot of losses. Oliver's summon, the four-armed skeleton wielding different weapons, appeared, pointing its weapons at the vagabonds, forcing them to distance themselves from Isaac. Arden's summon appeared above. The harpy flapped its wings once and a gale blew everyone further back, leaving Isaac groaning with an almost unrecognizable face, swollen from the attack of the rage-blinded mob. Lena stood on one of the buildings in the camp, watching the ordeal. She held the metal railing and began to speak. Word came from the watchman. An exposed clone of Cain cannot be tolerated. The cohort protectors of Paradise must know, all of them. At her words, the regulars began to approach once more. This was Cain they were talking about. Once he finally saw through Isaac's eyes, Paradise was doomed. Their families, everything was gone. To protect that, they were ready to kill Isaac. I say we kill him. Kill him. No, Arian's voice echoed as he stood above Lena, right on the third floor. He will be locked away and suppressed until the next day. Then we shall begin proper judgment. Lena squinted. She could see that Arian was trying to counter her prophecy. If Isaac was suppressed and imprisoned, how then would he be able to attack the cohort? The prisons here were made from steel forged by Elder Orion's summon. It was impossible to damage once suppressed, and that was with the consideration of mastery. A few minutes later, Isaac found himself behind bars in a dark place facing a hallway. They were underground. He was cuffed with suppressors and was still reeling from his wounds since Arian was against him being healed to at least appease others a little, and to make sure he was too weak to do anything. Arden stepped into his cell and gently caressed his swollen eyes and cheeks. Isaac, it will be okay. He didn't respond. His face was dark and his eyes barely visible. Even if he had an expression, they couldn't see it as his face was almost deformed. After a while, Arden finally left while Oliver looked at Isaac with pity. He was in charge of watching him, so even after Arden left, both of them sat there, one behind bars, one outside of it. Isaac clenched his teeth, tears filling his eyes. Him, a clone. He wanted to say these people would regret it when Godfrey or Percival showed up, but if these accusations were true, didn't that mean he was all alone? Of course Godfrey won't trust him, and neither would Percival. Isaac burst into laughter, but tears fell down his face, splattering on the ground. Hours passed, and the sun gave its place to the moon. The night had finally arrived. While lots of regulars entertained themselves watching fights in the pit, conversations concerning Isaac and how it would have been better if they rid themselves of a puppet remained in the background. In fact, most of them were here to ensure tonight would be his last. With all of them prepared, even if he somehow escaped, it would be impossible to kill them all. On the other hand, they would end him in the most brutal way possible. Meanwhile, the metal door leading to the underground corridor creaked open. Arden descended and shut the door behind her. She first gazed at Oliver, who sat close to the door, then at Isaac lying on the floor inside the cell. He faced the wall. "I brought something for him to eat. How has he been?" Arden asked while gesturing at the items in a semi-transparent plastic bag. Oliver looked at Isaac. "He's been crying," he sighed. "I think he might make it through the night." Arden smiled warmly. She went toward the cell and gently hit it twice. "Isaac, it's me, Arden," she spoke with a gentle tone. "Isaac, Isaac, Isaac." Arden's voice echoed faintly in Isaac's soul space as he found himself staring at a terrifying black spider, several times the size of his Goliath-sized spider summon. His summon shriveled, tucking its legs in as if dead while he gazed at this massive creature with a pale face. Neela's 8 crimson eyes bore down on him, like a god gazing down on a mere mortal. He had never felt so small. There was no trace of this thing being a summon. It didn't have a trace of his soul. It was the opposite. His own soul space was being subjected to the black spider's own soul. Isaac floated toward it despite his effort to distance himself. "Isaac?" Arden sprang to her feet when he didn't respond after all this while. She quickly opened the door, hurrying toward him, but paused sharply when black appendages, 8 of them, burst out Isaac's back, lifting him off the ground. Her eyes widened as Isaac's hair became longer, silky strands of gleaming black hair that caressed his shoulders. His eyes, darker than a starless night sky, gazed at her. Arden took 1 step backward, the plastic bag falling from her hand as she tried unleashing her summon, but a web string caught her mouth, pulling her toward him. Isaac slapped her body with the back of his hand. Arden couldn't believe her eyes, that was so fast. Bones cracked as she was launched into the metal bars. The impact forced blood out of her mouth as she fell back first, collapsing with a dull thud. Soft clinks of metal against stone rang as the suppressors hit the ground at the same time Arden fell. Isaac cracked his neck. Finally, his massive black spider legs reduced, clinging to his body like they were never there, but Oliver saw it all. "You have interesting memories," Isaac said to him. Looking at what had become of Arden, Oliver clenched his teeth. "She trusted you more than all of us, Isaac." "True, but I am not Isaac," Neela spoke through Isaac's mouth as her spider legs extended and grew bigger. "I am a god. I was once known as the memory thief." Oliver appeared in 8 different lenses, as if 4 eyes were in each of his eyes. "I will be humanity's worst nightmare." A dark diagram flared up before him and Oliver's summon burst out, slashing at Isaac's neck, but one of his spider legs lashed out at lightning speed, clashing with the sword. Then the other 7 pushed Isaac forward. His palm, opened wide, made contact with the skeleton's face, and he slammed it into the ground. The concrete floor shattered with web-like cracks spreading out, even to the walls. It seemed as if this floor would collapse as debris fell from above. Isaac appeared before Oliver, his fingers clamped tight around his neck as he lifted him up. The skeleton was pinned down by webs. "Isaac," Arden's weak voice rang as she looked at them, barely able to move any other part of her body. "That look, that pain you feel was what my kind felt when a madman descended with nothing but death. We've all had our fair share of selfish acts to further our growth, but blatant annihilation sows a seed more bitter than hatred." Isaac spoke and opened his mouth slightly. White mist came out of Oliver. As he stole Oliver's memories, Isaac's aura surged, rapidly climbing towards the peak of Paragon Tier. Both Oliver and Arden's summon appeared at the same time. Isaac speared two sharp spider legs through Oliver's summon, slamming it against the wall in the process. On the other hand, Arden's harpy wasn't far from her summoner. Since it has wind capabilities, attacking from a distance was much better. She blew a fierce gale with her wings, but it brushed past Isaac, who pinned himself to the ground with his spider legs, then unleashed a barrage of webs that glued the harpy to the wall, snapping its wings, which were bent in an unnatural position. Just then the metal door opened, revealing a regular. The noise had drawn him. He swiftly pulled out a pistol at the sight of Oliver and Arden's state. A pistol was his only option here, since his summon wasn't stronger than theirs, and this pistol had thrown tier bullets. The moment he began unleashing the bullets, Isaac shot a web string. The threads of the web grabbed the bullets but were flung back by the velocity of the bullets. Isaac caught it. The web had formed a pouch with bullets inside. The regular was about to escape, but small spiders gathered him from nowhere. He fought, crushing and killing them, but they were able to push him into the corridor. Unfortunately for him, the attack never stopped. They couldn't kill him, neither could they deal any reasonable damage, but they were able to suppress him. Just then the harpy which Arden retrieved and resummoned came with her talons. Isaac spun, grabbed her head and tore a hole through the wall with it. After absorbing the man's memories, Isaac loomed over Arden. Neela was a thief. She grew stronger by stealing memories, the same way a thief grew richer by stealing the wealth of others. The same way a thief who was caught would be stripped of his wealth. Those who were victims to Neela could gain back their memories when and if she died. But who could defeat a titled god in a world yet to mature? Although her titled god tier had not been restored yet, it wouldn't take long. After all, she had no need for the memories of strong individuals. Any memory could do it. This was the reason for her feared status in the arachnid world. While others needed more potent cores or items, all she needed were enough people. Memories just had no end as long as life existed. A few thousand or more, and she might ascend once more to her esteemed title as the memory thief of 100 caves, which would give her the ability to manifest her predatory domain that had given her so much prey in the past. Now then, Thalia staggered a bit as she approached the den where all the members of the cohort were gathered. She held a glass cup half filled with alcohol. Her cheeks were flushed, while Dax followed behind with slow steps like an elder brother watching over his reckless younger sister. "Haven't you had enough?" he asked. "Don't be such a killjoy. It's like every boy I like ends up in a bad state. Am I cursed?" She turned to him with puffy eyes. "You liked Isaac when?" Dax lifted up an eyebrow. "Oh, it just happened," she replied with an intoxicated tone. "And you like Oliver and me too." "Not as much. You're old, both of you." Thalia's response made Dax chuckle. "You've lost it." "She's older than all of us," he scoffed inwardly. His eyes suddenly sharpened when they got close to the door. It was too quiet. Hundreds of people were in there. How could it be this quiet? "Thalia, wait." He couldn't finish as Thalia pushed the door open. The cup in her hand fell to the ground, shattering into countless pieces. Her eyes bore witness to the huge den, a fun place for the cohort now filled with webs and spiders of different sizes. There were bodies littered around, some covered in webs. There were 2 heaps of regulars, taller than a man, and someone stood between them, with his back toward them. Thalia's eyes widened to the limit, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. Isaac tilted a part of his face toward them. "Welcome. I did not expect more guests." As he spoke, spiders crawled out. Some were as small as a palm, some were big enough to reach a grown man's waist. Though small, none was below throne tier. "Do not be frightened. I have not killed any of them. I just took their memories and their bodies collapsed. Thieves don't kill, reasonable ones at least, but our actions, sometimes lead to death. We won't win this fight, but flames burst out of Dax as he summoned his partner Jin. It held the mighty magma hammer, its wild crimson hair gleaming softly. Thalia, leave this place. No, a voice rang and someone appeared before them, a tall blue-skinned Oni. With a wave of its katana, dozens of spiders were cleanly sliced open. They barely reached the Oni's waist. Both of you should run. Make sure you alert the elders. Aryan, separated from his summon, spoke to them and fused with it once more. Brandishing both katana and wakizashi, the Oni Ronin met the wave of spiders head-on. Isshin unleashed a horizontal slash that went like an invisible wave, slicing open several spiders as he leaped high, teleporting with the wakizashi's skill. The Oni reappeared on one of the bigger spiders, with his wakizashi deep into its abdomen. With a light step, the Oni leaped high as if heading for the hole in the ceiling. From there, he swung his katana and wakizashi, the blades blurring in the eyes of the spiders. Invisible waves burst out, splitting over 100 of them into different pieces. Unfortunately, a lot of them went after Thalia and Dax, but they should be able to take care of it. With that in mind, Aryan made Isshin teleport once more. The Ronin reappeared before Isaac, who leaned back, chuckling softly as the gleaming katana swished past his face. His spider legs came at Isshin, but the skilled Oni deflected the spider legs only for Isaac's eyes to gleam with a feral light. "Found you," he whispered, shooting a web that stuck to Isshin's shoulder. Isaac somersaulted twice over the Oni and dragged the web with so much force Isshin was sent to the wall. He formed a crater on the wall. As Isshin forced himself out, the wall cracked even more. Before he was flung away, 4 of his tattoos had glowed, releasing 4 more of himself, but Isaac was able to react so fast that he webbed their katanas to the ground in their faces. Held by the threads of web tougher than a high-tension wire if it was made of divine tier material, faced the ceiling. The web holding their faces was attached to the ceiling, and Isaac perched on an intricate cobweb made with the necks of the 4 Ronins as pillars. He moved on it like a true spider. Incredible innate skill. He flipped as the Ronins vanished, all of them reappearing above where he once was. Now, however, he was perched on the ceiling, unleashing webs at their faces. He chuckled. It would be extremely annoying trying to remove those webs. With how strong those webs were, they might use their weapons on their faces. Outside, Thalia and Dax burst out of the door. Her fairy shot crystal bullets piercing through the bodies of the spiders, while Jin smashed them, but some of the stronger ones were coming for them. And that wasn't all. Their numbers seemed to be endless. There were almost 400 spiders after them. The night sky welcomed both of them, but they weren't the only ones. A jeep drove into the camp, its bright light forcing angry screeches from the spiders. Ronald emerged from the jeep, slamming the door shut as his normal ocean blue eyes gained a dangerous gleam. "I see why the elders sent me here. The boy is already possessed." Lucy came out from the other door. Ronald gestured for her to stay back as he took steady steps forward. Dax and Thalia were first bewildered as the spiders suddenly stopped chasing after them. From their frantic movements, they were clearly hesitating. "Go," Ronald's voice made both of them retreat, heading for the jeep. "I'll call for reinforcements from the elders," Thalia said, trying to reassure Ronald that they could still take control of the situation, but he looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "You're looking at the reinforcement." What?" Thalia looked at the jeep. Only Lucy was there. The girl was obviously frightened and there was no one else aside from her. "Leave them to me. None will leave this premise alive," Ronald said as the gleam in his eyes grew brighter. He activated Eclipsal State. "Shall we?" The moment Ronald said that, a spider lunged at him. He caught it, crushed its head, and unleashed a bear's roar at the others who finally rushed at him all at once. The The sight of how Ronald was nonchalantly sweeping through these spiders made chills run down Thalia and Lucy's spine. Truly, this man once stood against 100,000 orcs. What happened to Isaac? Where is he? Lucy turned to Thalia. Isshin fell on one knee, holding tight to his katana, whose tip was embedded into the ground to support his body. Blood dripped down the blade and the rest of his body as he trembled due to exhaustion. Over 10 of his clones were dead. He heaved in pain as there was a wound right below his ribs. Meanwhile, Isaac loomed over him. Such a pathetic attempt. A divine tear defeating a progenitor is nigh impossible. There are instances from you Oni blade masters, slayers in flesh and bones. I almost felt dread at the sight of you, for you bear the tattoos of a shogun, the best of the Oni race, but you're merely a disgrace. I am a Ronin, not a blade master. For the first time Isshin spoke, his voice broken, but his defiance was clear as day. Even worse than a disgrace then, Isaac said coldly as his spider legs swept down. Inches away from his head, a shocked voice rang. Captain! Isshin looked up. It was more like Aryan who was in Isshin. He looked up, shocked to see one of Isaac's eyes was normal once more. Isaac, he left Isshin's body and gasped. Isaac looked around, his eyes trembling. Was it me? No, it wasn't. Cain took over your body and he... It wasn't Cain, it's Neela doing. What? Aryan's eyes grew a bit wider. It's Neela. She's some kind of spider god who wants to leave behind a world filled with hollow living beings as vengeance to what Adam did to her kind. She doesn't really care much for her kind, but Adam's widespread massacre enraged her. Isaac explained with a shocked expression. Even he was stunned at what came out of his mouth. Isaac didn't just know all this. It felt like all he said was a life he lived. No wonder Lena saw you. It was a monster all along. But if there's a god monster inside of you, how are you conscious? Aryan asked, his brows creased. Something is happening to her. She tried to take over my soul space but triggered something strange. It's affecting both of us, but I think this is to my advantage. As Isaac spoke, his black spider legs dematerialized and he fell to his knees. In his soul space, Isaac saw Neela screaming, his eyes filled with disbelief. The giant spider turned into a black-skinned woman with a subtle shade of gray over her skin. She had 3 tiny beads embedded above both eyebrows. They were eyes, though no one would know, they seemed like onyx stones. Below her eyebrows were 2 normal eyes any human would have, but her irises were crimson, gleaming like rubies under sunlight. Long silky white hair, better than any hair texture Isaac had ever seen, fell down her sharp-featured face down her slender back, while 6 black spider legs were protruding from her back. Isaac swiftly lowered his head, his cheeks crimson. How can a spider be so? You dare! Neela's fury came out like a scream more than a yell. She covered her face. A reasonable woman would cover the areas supposed to be protected, but Neela was completely disgusted with what she had become. Flesh was utterly revolting to her. This shape wasn't all that voluptuous, but it would leave many gasping with wide mouths, and these eyes which could pull the souls of men and women alike into her trap was her worst nightmare. In fact, it was beyond a nightmare for Neela. She loathed this humanoid form. It made her want to pull out her flesh. As if that wasn't enough, Isaac's memories and emotions had fused with hers. His past memories, that is. She could feel what he felt and even understood why. A part of her even supported him. This feeling made her nauseous. Nauseous? Was this feeling because of this disgusting body? I hate you, she screeched at Isaac. Those weren't the first words he was expecting from a spider more beautiful than most models, but the feeling was almost mutual. He wanted to hate her for what she had used him to do, but a part of him understood her. A part of him felt her rage and justified it. It was like a part of Neela was inside of him, and a part of him was inside of her. The soul space was an adaptive trait special to humans of Earth. It was made by mana, and governed strictly by the mana system of this world, laws made by the mana tree itself. Neela had encroached into a different mana system and went straight to override its core, resulting in a backlash. Isaac didn't grant her permission, neither was he at death's door. Even then, Neela could have kept controlling his body if she didn't try to completely take over his soul space. She triggered the mana system and it acted. Since she wanted a body, it gave her one and enforced its law, which cost Neela more than what her worst nightmare could offer. There was only one master in the soul space, and naturally the owner was the master, the other would be the servant, like every other summon. Neela was at the verge of madness. "Give them back their memories. You can do that, right?" Isaac asked. Neela's eyes flared up as it sharpened. Give up her strength? She'd rather die. Do people vomit their food and it would be the same way it was before they ate it? She just finished speaking when the memories left her. Hundreds of white wisps flew out, causing Neela to scream. "Ah!" She lunged at Isaac but couldn't just touch him. He was being protected by the soul space. Isaac took a peek at her face. Neela was odd, yes, but she was so enchanting that it seemed as if she had stepped out of a master's painting. Just how could a freaking giant spider become this? Isaac couldn't wrap his head around it. Lucky for him, it seemed like this spider was under his control. The thought of this brought a smile to Isaac's face. Neela bared her white teeth, which unfortunately weren't her intimidating fangs. Sensing Isaac wasn't frightened at all, she transformed into a massive spider once more. Isaac's expression fell. Great Lord. Her strength had fallen to the middle level of the Paragon tier. It annoyed her. Just then Ronald, Lucy, Thalia, and Dax appeared. They saw everyone groaning. Some were injured, others badly bruised and beaten, but none suffered from life-threatening injuries. They found Isaac and Arian kneeling. Both of them joined their foreheads, with Arian holding Isaac's head like a father who had just recovered his son. "I thought I had lost you and the cohort." Lucy covered her mouth, her eyes moist. She was glad everyone was alive, as she had already assumed the worst. "I don't think you'll be accepted here anymore. The Watchman thinks you're a threat, and revealing it's a spider god won't make any difference, especially after this incident." He looked at Isaac, who paled at his words. "You have to leave. Go find Godfrey." What?" Seeing Isaac's shocked face, Ronald picked him up by the shoulder. He locked eyes with Isaac. "You don't want to be in the Watchman's hands or wait for these people to get up. Don't expect sudden mercy for nearly killing them. Head for the island. Factions are coming. The time of gods draws near. It will be best if you're around Godfrey during this time," Ronald whispered to him. "Pendragon Island." Isaac's eyes widened, but he managed to whisper back. Ronald slammed his chest, and Isaac was exchanged for a golden pebble in the Blue Gate dungeon Paradise was banished from. Isaac found himself close to the sea while in Paradise. A golden pebble dropped to the ground. "The Watchman was wrong," Arian said internally, his tone laced with disbelief. "The Watchman was never wrong." Gabriel slammed a huge book shut. He exhaled furiously before turning to the telescope behind him. "I'm starting to think you're deliberately ruining my plans and making a fool of me, you overgrown tree." He rose from his seat. "You forced my hands. What I shall do next will push Godfrey to the edge. I will take him back to his previous status, the fugitive prince." His eyes gleamed with a malevolent light. In a large hall, Arian faced the elders. They sat around a round table, eyes fixed on him. The elders weren't the strongest summoners in Paradise, but they were the most important. Inara, the woman with pinkish-red hair packed into a high bun, had a summon that could make clothes with special skills and of different tiers. Orion could craft things with metal that summons could add to themselves, a kind of artificial adaptive process. It was no different from a cheat code, a way to grow faster. A summon with fragile defense could simply put on an armor made by Orion and gain the defense of a turtle. John, the man in the middle, was the most frightening as his summon had one of the most versatile skills. That aside, the reason he stood before these powerful figures, elders of paradise, was as simple as it was heartbreaking. "We have agreed to let you go from the cohort." John's voice echoed, his eyes filled with regret. "You have served paradise well," Inara smiled. "Although the incident hangs over paradise like a dark cloud, it cannot darken the light you brought to it. Unfortunately, the time has come for you to leave." Orion sighed. Arian straightened his back, his hands clasped behind him like a soldier. "I nominate Arden as the next captain. What she lacks in strength, she makes up for with compassion and foresight. She has been of great help during my time as captain, and I believe she'll do even better than me in." Arian was just about to conclude when the huge doors were pulled open. Sunlight poured in. It was so bright that they couldn't see who was outside. "Give me one good reason you opened those doors. They better be good ones or there will be consequences." Orion snapped, speaking to the men who were in charge of the door. They were not supposed to open the door as long as a meeting was ongoing. Still as stoic as ever, a deep voice that made everyone's eyes widen rang as the silhouette of a man appeared at the entrance. Two towering beings flanked his sides, their bodies blocking the sun. With the sun out of the way, Arian and the elders could see the man who spoke. He had a head full of gray hair and a black eye patch over his left eye. He had an imposing build, but it was nothing compared to the mighty knights by his side. They had to bend their heads to enter the hall. Both were clad in black armor. The male had a silver faceless mask which had thin slanted eye slits with intricate golden designs at the forehead. His short white hair was tied into a ponytail. Short spikes came out of his huge pauldrons and the chest plate came so high, it shielded his neck. He wore a black cloak, but it was made to only cover his left side. This knight had a tomahawk hung on the metal hook at his back. Beside it was a double-edged poleaxe. The axe had large blades on both sides. Besides this 12-foot-tall knight was a female black knight, judging from the curves of her armor. She wore a battle skirt. The back went down to her boots, but the front stopped at her thighs. Her armor had slender spikes on the pauldrons. The face of her helmet stopped at her nose and the forehead branched out like the horns of a dragon, two on both sides. She was 9 foot tall with twin white braids that fell down her back. Her cloak also covered her left side. The aura of these two knights was intimidating. Inara's eyes widened as Saul, the gray-haired man, stepped into the hall with Arnold, his closest elite behind the Black Knights. "Saul," Orion's eyes widened in shock. "See, Captain," Arian stuttered with wide eyes. Saul frowned, his cold gaze fell on Arian. "You've lost your edge. This wasn't my expectation when I made you captain. The cohort is a disgrace. How can the protectors of paradise fall to just one boy?" Arian looked at the entrance. He saw Dax there. Of course, Saul knew what had happened. Dax was his summon, his weakest summon. This man Saul was also his master, the greatest captain paradise had ever known. Arian glanced at the knights from the corner of his eyes. His master's right and left hand were these two knights. Black Order knights. The female was Apollon, the male was Abaddon. These were the first summons Arian saw speak. They were terrifying warriors capable of growing at an extremely fast pace. Somehow, they reminded him of Godfrey's knights. If their armor was gold and cape white, then they would have been no different from the Golden Order knights. After all, these knights also had that state where their strength surged. Hybrids. These knights were the only summons the Watchmen called hybrids, existences that were superior to primals and chimeras, as they were the perfect combination of both. Saul walked past Arian. "I will reassume my former position as the captain. The cohort needs reshaping." John looked at Inara, who gave a nod. Orion exhaled. "You've been away for a decade, Saul. I'm glad you're back. You have been reinstated. The cohort is in your hands once more, John said. Show them. Saul turned to Arnold, who brought a pouch filled with lots of dungeon cores and few paragon cores. The elders were shocked. These cores will push all the members of the cohort to their peak. I will whip the cohort into a group capable of raiding titled God-tier dungeons, Saul boldly declared before tilting his head toward Arian. A wolf that has lost its fangs does not deserve meat because it would be wasted on it. Go home to your wife. You think dropping your weapon will give you peace. You're sorely mistaken. With that, Saul left the hall. Alex's personal assistant barged into his guild master's sitting room with an alarmed look. His abrupt entrance made Alex and his friend Raphael, who he was speaking to on how to recruit Godfrey, turn. What happened? Alex's brows creased. Has there been another outbreak? Raphael rose to his feet. Alex's personal assistant went straight for the television's remote and switched it on, his heart pounding hard. Alex and Raphael saw Miquella before the press. She stood in front of the agent headquarters in Manhattan, before two ivory statues of agents. The Paragon-tier summoners had a sudden change of expression when they heard what Miquella was saying. She revealed to the world what they already knew, that Tamaz was her lover. But the shocking news was that his killer was Godfrey, the Golden Knight summoner. He was also behind the death of Ouroboros' head, Morgana, James Pendragon, and the former Mr. Manhattan. Miquella, before the public, announced Godfrey's status as a fanatic who fed her lover's summon to his knights. She called him a threat to the globe, a powerful predator moving freely in a world of prey. Raphael's face darkened. What? He's Tamaz's killer. As much as I regret this, Miss Miquella's revelation does explain how he grew strong enough to clear the Forbidden City. Alex's personal assistant replied with a somber tone. Just then, several vehicles screeched to a stop before Alex's house, and his daughter Wang Yinglu emerged with the guild's elite. She had already made calls requesting aid from other guilds and informing the authorities. She stormed into the building with the guild's best summoners. As much as Alex wanted to deny this, Miquella was a living witness. He knew of her relationship with Tamaz, and who else was strong enough to bring down a powerful paragon like Tamaz. All of them went straight to the room where Godfrey had been for the past few days. He had been unconscious since clearing the Forbidden City. He's unconscious. There's no better time other than now. Wang Yinglu told her dad. Her shoulders were already tense. Raphael was ready to unleash his wolf the moment something was off. He couldn't believe Alex had been tending to a fanatic all this time, ignorant of his crimes. Alex grabbed the handle and opened the door. Blood drained from Yinglu's face, the same for Alex's personal assistant who almost had a heart attack. The reason was simple. He was awake, the man the authorities called the most dangerous existence on the planet. Godfrey sat at the edge of the bed. He wore black pants and a black unbuttoned shirt, revealing his bandaged chest, abdomen, and his forearms. Their summons with healing skills couldn't heal his wounds, so they used ointments made from dungeon herbs, and left the rest to his own self-heal skill. Although Godfrey looked weak, his blackout eyes intimidated all of them. He averted his eyes from them and looked at the television in the room, where a news anchor was referring to Miquella's stunning revelation and announcement. This man defeated an army of 100,000 Crimson Touty soldiers, burned an entire dungeon and killed a paragon, forcing another to scurry into hiding all this time. Even if we were all to gang up on him, I'm afraid we would lose. Alex's personal assistant muttered inwardly. I know it's Cain behind all this, but the way they look at me is infuriating. Godfrey muttered to himself as he lowered his eyes to his body. Did you kill Tamaz? Alex asked. Would you believe me if I said I didn't? Godfrey responded as he slowly rose to his feet. He could feel his mana cores were back and full. No, we won't believe a fanatic, Raphael growled, activating Eclipsal state. His demon wolf transformed him. He grew a bushy tail. His skin turned black with mist drifting out of him. 6 ghastly white eyes adorned his face, with thick white hair like a mane fell from head down his back. His height grew. His legs became 2 powerful digitigrade legs. With a ferocious growl, Raphael moved. Just 1 step and he was already above Godfrey, claws aimed at his target's face. "I would rethink that," Godfrey's words rang, "if I were in your shoes." Raphael's eyes dilated, but he struck down nonetheless. Threats would not work on him. Not at. Godfrey caught his head and flung him right through the television. He tore through all the walls he came across until he was out of the building. "That was mercy for caring for me. If any of you make 1 move against me, I won't hold back." Godfrey tilted his head. "Do you understand that?" Alex shut his eyes for a moment, then it snapped open, gleaming with sharp light. "Unfortunately." "Rethink that," Godfrey interrupted him, his aura billowing off like a tide. Wang Yinglu held the door frame for support while the elites had collapsed. Alex's eyes widened involuntarily. "Why are you not like what the news says? Shouldn't you kill us now we know who you truly are?" Alex asked. Wang Yinglu's eyes widened. Yes, it could either be that or he wasn't at his full strength. It might be the latter. Raphael returned at this moment. He might have acted rashly at first, but if he attacked together with Alex, Godfrey will fall despite his strength. He was just one man who wasn't at his full strength. At least he didn't look like he was at his peak. "He's just flaunting. Stop hesitating, Alex," Raphael roared. At that moment the sky darkened. Not just in China, but the entire world went dark almost instantly. The level of mana was rising at breakneck speed. It was the mana eclipse, a sign of a maturing world. A phenomenon where mana would cloak a world like a blanket, causing darkness that would last days. When light appears at the horizon of this darkness, gods would arise. No one cared about what the news was saying when the sky went dark. This wasn't the Great Vanishing, it was much bigger. The effect on Earth would be much greater. Godfrey's situation with Alex and the others also changed as they found themselves in a Green Gate dungeon. A defend the fort dungeon type, with countless skeletons at the horizon. Giant skeletons wielding massive weapons with round shields were like pillars in this vast horde, almost as tall as the wall. The land was red and rotting. The sky was covered with gray clouds as the sun struggled to pierce its light through. This was it, the night before the dawn of gods. Earth had reached the end of its first evolution. While Earth began to grow, continents growing apart, forming new islands and bodies of water, Godfrey found himself in the compound of an abandoned fortress. It had tall, thick walls with red flags billowing bleakly from the twin square pillars flanking the entrance. There was no gate. It must have been destroyed. The compound was quite large. They were all used to appearing in medieval-looking dungeons, so being in a fortress like this wasn't alarming. However, where things became unusual was the vast red land beyond the wall, and at the far horizon were skeletons. The small ones were barely visible, but the giant skeletons revealed to everyone in the fortress that an absurd number of skeletons loomed at the horizon. Luckily, they weren't moving, so they would not be at the fortress yet. They had to make sure the gate was fixed, and plans were made before that army of skeletons started moving. This was one of the most dangerous types of Green Gate dungeons, with research proving over 97% death, meaning for many this dungeon meant guaranteed death. The wall was old but sturdy. Despite being so desolate and abandoned, the structure could still provide adequate defense. Unfortunately, everyone shoved this at the back of their minds the moment it was confirmed that the skeletons weren't moving. They all faced Godfrey. Godfrey stood on one side, and a few feet away stood Alex, Raphael, Wang Yinglu, the personal assistant, and 100 Pagoda Guild elites. Most of them, excluding Alex, glared at Godfrey with hostility. Godfrey looked at his bare feet and at the feet of the others which were covered. Most of them wore boots while Alex, his personal assistant, and Raphael wore shoes. "I'm not even wearing shoes," he muttered to himself with a dry tone, then he looked at them. "My fight is not with you. Focus on clearing this dungeon because attacking me will just be seeking death, and I really don't want to kill people who took care of me." Raphael frowned. He would have believed Godfrey. After all, he had been showing restraint all this time, but there was a good chance Godfrey was a master schemer, a man who could flip so perfectly you wouldn't suspect a thing. His act now would naturally make anyone question if he was the same brutal man Miquella said he was. But Godfrey's growth did not make any sense. Filling up the pieces with what Miquella said made everything make sense. Even if Godfrey was favored by the mana tree and had absurd potential, his growth was too fast. There was only one explanation for that. He was feeding beast summons to his humanoid summon. It was how the fanatics grew stronger at a rapid pace. While he thought, two people appeared on the twin pillars flanking the entrance. It was Merlin and Himary. Both of them were stunned at first but jumped down when they recognized Alex and Raphael. Their expression turned hostile the moment they laid eyes on Godfrey. The bad stories about this young man were numerous. Of course, he had stopped some dangerous dungeons and even killed the paragon that appeared in Manhattan, but all that was for his selfish reasons. Everyone saw him in the same light the media and the authorities painted him, as the golden armored demon. Some speculated he might cause a great disaster like other powerful fanatics who took down millions. Because of that, Godfrey had to be put down before he would go on a killing spree with his army. "If you're so innocent, then wear this." Wang Yinglu suddenly spoke up when the tension was high. She could sense no one wanted to make a careless movement because Godfrey wasn't weak in the slightest. Maybe he was currently still recovering from his injuries, but that didn't make him any less weak. This 18-year-old had ridiculous feats. He was indeed the golden armored demon, as people were beginning to call him. She stretched forth a cervical collar suppressor, which had been lying flat as it was attached to her belt all this time. It was an upgraded suppressor. "Prove your innocence," Raphael said. "This is the only way," Alex sighed. "Once I wear that, I'll become like him." Godfrey looked at Merlin. "A pet of the authorities. They'll be glad to have me under their oath." "What did you call me?" Merlin unleashed his summon. The Axe General glared at Godfrey, who smiled softly. "It's all right." His tone dropped. His eyes unleashed a keen gleam as his posture straightened. Tiny stones on the pavement blocks around Godfrey's feet began to tremble. Alex's personal assistant didn't know why he gulped. Maybe they shouldn't have pushed him too far. Just when Godfrey was about to unleash his summons, the door of a stone building in the fortress swung open. A huge gust of wind blew against their faces. Everyone turned and saw a gray-haired man with an eye patch emerging from the building with another man who had black hair and a neat shadow beard beside him. Behind them were Arden, Thalia, Oliver, and Dax. All of them had crimson X symbols on their attire. It was either at the arm, back, collar, or thigh. "I thought we were alone." Saul's deep voice rang. His eyes gleamed when he saw Arden and the others' reaction to Godfrey. "Golden hair, dominant demeanor. That's him, my student's student, Godfrey Daniels. I failed to recruit his father, but he has the fire needed to make a great elite class." Saul thought, his eyes narrowing on Godfrey. On the other hand, Alex's eyes gleamed dangerously at the sight of vagabonds. The Pagoda elite swiftly unleashed their summons, covering a portion of the large compound with different beasts. Some were bears, some were mountain lions, some saber-toothed tigers with remarkable speed, some even summoned huge serpents. But Wang Yinglu's summon was the most eye-catching of them all. Her summon was a four-winged griffin, an elemental creature made completely of flames. The sight of the griffin made Saul's eyes narrow. It was an elemental, a creature capable of rising to the rank of ancient gods. That was how powerful the race of elementals were. Their mana system was based on constellations. The constellations had different figures, each representing an element. The closer an elemental creature was to the shape of its constellation, the higher its potential. This griffin was identical with the constellation of flames in the world of elementals. Wang Yinglu might not know, but Saul did, and he made up his mind to kill her. He would recruit Godfrey and slaughter the rest. After all, they represented the authorities that forced them to become fugitives. Saul summoned Apollyon and Abaddon. Their presence changed the atmosphere. Alex and Raphael squinted. "How about we help a member of the cohort?" Saul chuckled. "Fighting here won't benefit any of us," Alex spoke. "There was a great horde out there. If they weakened themselves, it was over." "My prince," Solstice's voice rang in Godfrey's head. "You feel it, don't you?" Godfrey gave a soft nod as he stared at the Black Order Knights. Somehow he could tell those two were from the Patan world. Those two are generals like the rest of us, but rebelled against the unknown king. They formed the Black Order with nearly 100,000 knights defecting with them. It happened on our darkest day, and the unknown king, savior of our race, was nowhere to be seen. It caused them to lose faith, but their departure only worsened our fate. Solstice spoke softly, like the story played out before his eyes once more as he laid eyes on Apollyon and Abaddon, once his brother and sister. "They're not weak. The man is fused with a rare human race whose mana system is the ability to shift into their kill. They have a limited slot and must choose wisely. He has 3 slots, and all 3 of them have been occupied by 2 powerful creatures from our world and a true orc chieftain, one of the greatest warriors of the true orc race, which is the first and most powerful orc kind. The woman is fused to a dragon-horned ice python. She is the Ice Witch. Her ice is unlike anything you've encountered so far on Earth. It can't be touched, or you risk losing a limb or your life." Solstice continued. "Her frost is able to turn a living being into a frost creature, and anything that creature touches freezes, a cursed frost that cannot be touched." Godfrey exhaled slowly. Once more he was beyond stunned at the capabilities of the alchemist. They were definitely inhuman. Apollyon and Abaddon, knights who lost faith in the unknown king and turned their backs against the order. They must hate me. I guess every blessing has a burden. "Fascinating," a voice rang, and everyone lifted their head to the top of the building. They saw 4 individuals clothed in black robes, their eyes gleaming from the dark shade of the hoods. The one who spoke was a grand black moon, the genie summoner, Lord Dexter, the same man responsible for the death of Godfrey's father and a huge percentage of dungeon deaths on Earth. "Praise be to the Father of the New World. The vagabond rats and the government pets are before me." His eyes gleamed even brighter as he looked down on them, disregarding their advantage in numbers. The fragile peace that had not even found a proper ground to settle between the vagabonds and the guilds was at the brink of collapsing when Lord Dexter and other fanatics appeared. "I see, these pets and rats have you cornered. We came just in time to aid a fellow worshipper." The moment Dexter said that, the eyes of the other 3 fanatics behind him glowed. Immediately, they unleashed their summons. 3 Ignikai berserkers appeared. Volcanic rocks made their armor, and they all wore masks with 2 horns, exposing only their eyes that were like the depths of a volcano. One of them held a bow, another had a sword glowing like it just came out from the forge across its back, and the last one, almost twice as big as the other 2 who were 9 feet tall, had no weapons, just massive arms that could melt whatever it touched with magma. "I knew it." Raphael clenched his fist. Alex was doubtful all along. Now he had also heard it. A grand black moon had called Godfrey one of their own. "What rubbish! Godfrey is a member of the Vagabonds, or did you forget who annihilated your forces when you tried to abduct his mother?" Saul sneered. His words shocked the guilds. Raphael also squinted. What was going on here? Dexter chuckled. Back then, we were at odds indeed, but after losing his wife under the nose of the authorities' most powerful summoners, he finally saw the light. He looked at Saul. You might still doubt, but the proof is that even until today, he has not returned to his own people when his mother is still there. Why? Dexter smiled. Guess. Godfrey raised an eyebrow. What was Cain trying to achieve? Was he trying to force him back to paradise or be publicly treated as a fanatic, thus being hated and hunted by all three factions? It was a smart plan, even a crazy one. Unfortunately, Godfrey didn't plan on going according to the script. Cain made his plans in such a way that it was nearly impossible to back off or evade. There would always be consequences. The reason being because his cards were the entire world. He controlled their views without their knowledge, and to disregard his plans meant he would have to disregard the direct means Cain planned to use to trap him. People. Saul's eye gleaming with slight killing intent reflected in Godfrey's irises. He also saw Arden, Thalia, and Oliver's expression change. Of course, Dexter's words made sense. He became a fanatic after losing Isolde. What a perfect lie that no one would find unreasonable. Cain wanted to cage him, to oppress him with the public's views, and if he wanted to truly be free, he had to let go. They could think whatever they wanted because Godfrey knew the truth. None of this would make him reveal that Isolde is alive. Once he said and proved that, no one would point fingers at him anymore, but doing that would be incredibly stupid. He would lose the little he had against Cain. To win against a mastermind like him, he also needed hidden cards. If he revealed what he had too early, there would be no telling what Cain would do. But whatever he did, it would end in his favor. Right now, Cain felt everything was within his control, and Godfrey planned to let him continue with that mindset. If someone like Cain thought something was out of order, he would become erratic. That would not result in a pleasant end. He wasn't strong enough yet. Good thing Earth was growing alongside him. Once he returned, he would enter gates that could quicken his growth. For now, though, you know you're lying. He glanced at Dexter. I'm not a fanatic, neither am I a vagabond anymore. I refuse to be chased into hiding by people who are simply afraid of me and want to put me on a leash. I refuse to bear the name vagabond. It hurts my pride, and of course, I have nothing to do with the authorities. Then what are you? Alex frowned. Godfrey blinked with a calm face as he spoke. Godfrey Daniels, no affiliation. He was to become a monarch. That's not wise. A man that stands alone dies alone, Saul said as Apollyon and Abaddon's eyes gleamed dangerously. It was obvious Saul saw him as a threat now. Dexter smiled maliciously, while the guild members looked at Godfrey like he was a lost sheep. Who says I'm alone? Godfrey's words rang as portals appeared all around him. All 8 ranking knights emerged. Thousands of Golden Order knights manifested on the top of the wall. All around the fortress and outside of it, a dark shadow spread out from which the Shadow Tauti army, over 30,000 of them, emerged. As if that wasn't enough, several dragons appeared in the sky. Some landed on the wall, unleashing deafening roars. In an instant, the fortress was crowded with armored knights, shadow wraiths, dragons, and Tempest's lightning bear unit. You're terribly mistaken. Godfrey's cold words struck everyone like a sledgehammer. Saul's eye widened to the limit. In all his 56 years of living, never had he seen something like this. Wang Yinglu gasped. They were surrounded. Was this the power of one man? Alex glanced at Raphael, who was frozen by shock, as if telling him this was the reason he had been calm all day. They weren't speaking to just one man but an army, and yet didn't even know that Godfrey's army had grown this big. This is the summon of one man. Could it be that I have seen someone as monstrous as our Lord? That is impossible. It's impossible, but... The eyes of one of the fanatics behind Dexter shook. He looked at his comrades and saw the same look in their eyes. What in the world was this young man? Just then Godfrey tilted his head toward them. No, he was glaring at their leader, Lord Dexter. "You're a Black Moon. You must know the man who unleashed the orcs that ended Ronald Daniels' life 18 years ago." Dexter chuckled. Godfrey's eyes narrowed. "So, it's you." Just then, Godfrey tilted his head toward them. No, he was glaring at their leader, Lord Dexter. "You're a Black Moon. You must know the man who unleashed the orcs that ended Ronald Daniels' life 18 years ago." Dexter chuckled. Godfrey's eyes narrowed. "So, it's you. You're the same man who created the Purple Gate where you fanatics almost abducted my mother." "It was me." Dexter had a broad smile. "You might be powerful, but the father of the new world, Cain himself, has awoken. Touch me and see the destruction he will bring upon you and everything else." His eyes gleamed as he squinted. "You're just a pitiful kid." "I see." The moment Godfrey said that, Isolde hurled her spear at the large Ignikai berserker. It pierced his chest and froze his entire body in an instant. Solstice blitzed, unsheathed his twin swords, removed the heads of the other two before resheathing them as if they were never drawn. Isolde moved her index finger, and the spear came out of the large berserker. He crumbled into frozen shards while the spear returned to her gauntleted hand. Before Dexter could speak, Godfrey flashed, grabbed him, and both of them reappeared outside the fortress on the red soil. His fist smashed into Dexter's cheek before the Grand Black Moon could find more menacing words. His hope in his god flew away, as did his teeth. Another blow kissed his nose, cracking his skull. Godfrey was intentionally being brutal. His punches, restrained enough so as not to kill Dexter in a single blow, kept smashing into the Black Moon's face and body, followed by the sound of bones cracking. The Black Moon could barely formulate a scream, as he was reduced to an unrecognizable bloody pulp in mere seconds. His eyes were bulging out even while he lay there, beaten to death. Who would dare attack when they heard his god was alive? Everyone feared Cain. They had to. His lord was the most powerful human. He had brought Earth to his knees once and would definitely do it again. A whisper of his name and thousands would be paralyzed with fear. That was how it was supposed to be, but all he felt in his last moment wasn't the fear of those scared of his lord, but his own fear. Apollyon and Abaddon stared at the Golden Order knights around them. They saw Solstice, Dirge, and Tempest looking at them. So that was him, the unknown king. He certainly did not look like the coward they thought he was. He was rather imposing. That was a paragon. Arnold whispered to Saul, who realized he couldn't treat Godfrey like a boy anymore. "Should I distract his army while you handle him?" Arnold asked softly. Saul weighed the options and decided not to. Arnold had a powerful summon and was a paragon, but there was a chance that he might lose Arnold here. Godfrey wasn't out for their heads, so it was best to wait for the best time, which would be, if they were amongst the fortunate ones, that the mana tree would choose. Once that happened, he would snuff out Godfrey. The young man was too strong to be left alone to grow. Who knew what he would grow into in the future if he was this strong at this point? "What do we do?" Raphael asked Alex. His daughter also looked at him. "We need to work together to clear this dungeon. With the state of mind Godfrey has, it would have been better if he was the killer. Because now, I don't even know what he'll become." While Alex spoke to Merlin, Raphael, Himary, and the other guild members, Isolde walked out of the gate and set her eyes on the skeletons that had awoken from their slumber. She had sensed their movement. Godfrey turned toward her as she stretched her hand, unleashing a massive portal. Luther's head first came out. Large black scales adorned his massive body. His head alone was as big as a building, and his height rivaled a skyscraper. Massive horns jutted out of Luther's skull. This behemoth of a dragon darkened the sky and caused a deafening silence to engulf the fortress. Luther the Black Death didn't roar. He simply unfurled his wings, so large that the entire fortress couldn't see a strand of light. It generated a huge gust of wind, so fierce that Isolde had to disperse it herself or the fortress would be damaged. Luther flew, heading toward the great horde. In the heart of this once sleeping horde, a man with few strands of long white hair from his scalp opened his blue eyes. He was withered with an extremely pale white skin. He looked around, stretched his hand toward the fortress in the distance, then opened his fist, pointing his bony finger at it. His army of over 100,000 marched, but darkness engulfed the right side of his army. What came next were flames, torrents of flames from the sky. Hundreds of skeletons were engulfed in one breath. Luther kept breathing flames, sweeping through thousands. From afar, everyone saw fire rain down on the skeleton army. Luther's purple flames consumed and left nothing behind, giants and small skeletons alike. The pale man glared at the dragon and fused with one of the giants, who launched his spear skyward, and it struck Luther, piercing his side, right under his wings. Luther turned his head, roasting that particular giant as he fell from the sky. His crash killed several hundred more skeletons, but his roar of anger and pain stirred the anger of a mother. That giant skeleton came out of Luther's flames, burning but alive. Isolde activated blackout state, which for a general was a 1.5 increase. Her tier shot from 26 to 27.5. She clenched her fist, and the clouds turned crimson. A massive meteor descended from the clouds with several smaller ones. She retrieved Luther, who had already burned a good portion of the skeleton army, and watched the meteor fall right on that giant skeleton. It decimated the battlefield with a catastrophic boom, and the wave reached the fortress, which was quite far from the impact zone. The earth trembled heavily. Isolde opened several portals, and dozens of dragons emerged. Kill the rest. She ordered her dragons, who went ahead breathing torrents of flames on surviving skeletons. The sight of dragons raining flames reflected in Saul's eyes, as he gazed at that 7 feet, 7 foot tall, majestic female knight, standing beside Godfrey. She was the smallest, and this was what she could do. I saw this at first glance, but do you have any connection to these knights? Saul tilted his head to his own knights. Alex and Raphael sat in an office. Opposite them was Mrs. Beijing, who had invited them over to Beijing after the authorities stormed Alex's home in Shanghai, and Godfrey was nowhere to be found. I heard Godfrey was in your home. Well, where is he? She asked, staring at both men with an expression that said she would like to know what really occurred. We couldn't capture him. He was beyond us. Alex's reply made Mrs. Beijing stare at him, and Raphael with disbelief obvious on her face. He was stronger than both of you, she asked, unable to believe what she had heard. It's not just him, Mrs. Beijing. Some of his summons have the power of a top-level paragon tier or even higher. We saw what shouldn't be possible for just one man, Raphael stated, his fury calmed by the pure display of power that met his eyes in the Green Gate dungeon. What? Mrs. Beijing stuttered, losing her composure. It hit deeper when men who once stood at the world's peak spoke like this. You mean he has more than one summon at the Paragon tier? Her eyes slowly grew wide. He has 8 summons, and most of them have frightening innate skills, Alex told her with a grave tone. I don't think Godfrey killed Tamaz because with the kind of power he had, he could do even worse, Raphael sighed. With the power Godfrey revealed, if he was indeed a fanatic, he would have fed their summons to his humanoid summons and would not have brutally killed a black moon right before their eyes. From the little they've heard, he had killed quite a good number of fanatics, enough to make him Cain's enemy. Another interesting piece of news was that the fanatics were deliberately trying to deceive them. That was the only way he could explain Dexter claiming Godfrey to be one of their own. It was to make them think Godfrey was a fanatic. Alex's eyes gleamed. Miquela lied. Raphael shot Mrs. Beijing a knowing look. Seeing it, she lifted an eyebrow. Do you think the council is responsible for what she said? You weren't, Alex's brows creased. We were not, Mrs. Beijing replied with wide eyes. It's Miquela. She's the one who killed Tamaz or knows who did. The only reason my speculation might be right is because I believe she has joined Cain's faction. Alex's words made Mrs. Beijing frown deeply. How can someone under oath become a fanatic? They have lost the urge. It can't be impossible. Cain might not be dead anymore. The grand black moon mentioned something about him being alive once more. Mrs. Beijing's eyes widened at Raphael's revelation. That would mean one of our top agents has been compromised. She managed to say, after taking a long time to recover from the staggering news. I'll speak with the rest of the council. For now, your help is greatly needed. Earth is still covered in darkness, and we don't know how long it will last, but there has been a drastic rise in dungeon breaks and outbreaks. Now both of you are back. Stability can be ensured. Please make sure your guild works together with the agents. Alex nodded and stood up. Once this is over and titled gods arise, the association of origins might change. Let's hope the next time we meet, one of us will have the potential to become a titled god or already be one. Mrs. Beijing smiled. She watched both men leave, rose up, walked to the glass wall and looked down. She saw them leave the building and enter a vehicle. Cain is alive. Her eyes flickered with concern. The next moment it turned red. So I am alive. Fascinating. Godfrey came out of a portal, appearing in the man-made forest around Pendragon Mansion, but he found agents around the place. Worse, Miquela was there, and strangely, there were two other progenitors. All three of them had white trench coats with golden buttons. Progenitors are already popping up, or the authorities are revealing their hidden cards. I guess they're pretty serious about me this time. He sighed. Arthur must be under huge pressure being Mr. Manhattan and housing a global fugitive at the same time. The moment he took a step forward, Isolde's voice rang in his head. You know what, darling Tilda? I haven't really said it, but you're not going to sneak back in there so we can continue sleeping under my parents' roof, right? Isolde's words made Godfrey's eyes widen. Although her voice was deliberately extra spicy, the venom dripping from it was enough to kill. Godfrey had no idea what Isolde went through with her mom. Isolde, I don't want to hear it. My parents will be able to take care of themselves just fine, and I will be in my domain for the time being. Godfrey was stunned. Just what had he done? She used sweet titles, but the threat hidden within gleamed like a dagger. She would be in her domain where he couldn't reach her for the time being. How long exactly? Was she angry with him for trying to go back to Pendragon Island? Women. He rubbed his forehead. They were hard to understand sometimes. She could have just said, let's find somewhere else. He wasn't ready for this drama. The moment Godfrey took 2 more steps forward, her voice rang again. What are you doing? I thought you were going to your domain, Godfrey chuckled nervously. Her tone was quite strong. He heard her click her tongue. Though unwilling, Godfrey turned his back on the mansion. An hour later, he approached Snow's tea shop. Isolde's voice had vanished. She must have gone to her dragon domain. The sign on the door was closed. Suddenly, someone wearing a hoodie approached. Godfrey, the stranger said as he drew closer and pulled down his hood. Isaac, Godfrey raised an eyebrow. Your hair, should I call you a god now? He said. Isaac didn't reply. He just went close and hugged him. Godfrey found himself smiling. He patted Isaac's back. Did Lucy break your heart? Isaac scoffed, flipping his hood back on. She did not. I'm just homeless. I couldn't go to the Pendragon Mansion. It's packed with agents. Homeless? Well, that makes 2 of us. Godfrey's response made Isaac stutter. W what? We're closed. They turned to the speaker and saw Snow wearing a baseball cap. The entire world was covered in darkness. Only the light from street lights, cars and buildings lighting up the world. But in this darkness, three fugitives finally felt a bit free at last. All three of them looked at each other for a while before Godfrey broke the silence. "Can we stay for the night?" Snow walked past him, brought out a key and slotted it into the keyhole. "It would be best if you came to my house. Rowana would be happy to have you guys." "Rowana? You're dating Rowana?" Isaac's eyes widened. Although Tyla took the top spot in terms of looks, Rowana's gentle character made her many students' favorite. It was odd to Isaac that someone like Snow could date a kind girl like her. They were the opposite of each other. "Yes, you find it odd." Snow raised an eyebrow as he opened the door and walked inside the tea shop. Isaac looked at Godfrey. "Didn't she have a crush on you when we were still in school? I heard she tried to hit on you in a tea shop like this one. Could it be because of you she?" Godfrey covered Isaac's mouth. He looked in the direction Godfrey wanted him to look at and saw Snow's frigid glare. Isaac's eyes widened. "He's jealous," Godfrey said with a flat face. Isaac's cheeks bulged while Snow scoffed. "You know you're not better than me in looks. In fact, you're not even close. Isolde was a blessing. You don't deserve her." He shot back. Isaac shuddered. Was Snow mad? Why did he mention Isolde? Godfrey was in a good mood now, but mentioning his dead partner might make him revert to his cold demeanor. His eyes narrowed as he was completely bewildered when Godfrey rubbed his eyes. "What brought you here?" he asked Snow, who casually went ahead to dial Rowana's number. What was going on here? Isaac was confused. "I forgot something," Snow replied before speaking with Rowana on the phone. When he was done, he turned toward them. "She's preparing something. You two look like homeless men, so you should be hungry," Snow told them, then tilted his head toward Isaac. "What happened to you?" he asked, hinting about his hair. "It's a long story." "Long story or not, at least your looks have surpassed Godfrey's." Snow's remark made Godfrey chuckle. Still bitter, his calm smile made Snow's eyes twitch. Back in Snow's home, Rowana was in the kitchen when she heard screams. She paused, then slowly left the kitchen, heading straight for the sitting room. She heard the sounds of vehicles driving past the road at high speed, followed by a crash and people's panicked screams, this time much closer to her house. Her heart skipped a beat. This neighborhood has been relatively quiet. Although a blue gate appeared a good distance away, there were armed policemen manning the gate. It couldn't be that it had turned black due to the unusual global changes going on due to the mana spike. She had watched the news earlier about a city where the beasts in the zoo had sudden mutations and wrecked the place. They were big before, but now they have become monstrosities. Lives were lost. In fact, there was lots of such news around the globe. She exhaled slowly, approached the window, brushed the curtain aside and peeked. Blood drained from her face when she saw werewolves, 8 feet tall with metal claws as long as talons, jumping on rooftops and moving on the street attacking people whose summons were no match. The mana rippling from these creatures was much stronger than what she had ever faced. Clearly, the policemen had fallen. A guild would probably step in soon, but lives were already lost, and these things were around her house. She could only pray they wouldn't notice her. Rowana rushed back to the kitchen to get her phone, then came back to the window, watching with uneven breath as she fiddled with her phone to call Snow. Suddenly, a werewolf stopped before her house, stood on its 2 powerful digitigrade legs and sniffed while facing her door. Then its head snapped toward the window. Rowana ducked as fast as she could, her breath loud enough for her ears. Her heart trembled when she heard the werewolf's heavy steps toward the door. Other loud thumps rang, a sound that told her other werewolves were taking interest in her home too. The oppressive aura of several king-tier werewolves almost choked her. In the tea shop, Snow saw Rowana's call and picked up. "Adonis, help me." Rowana's voice barely registered when the sound of the door being slammed open, and her abrupt scream flooded his eardrums. Snow's eyes widened. He dashed out of the shop, blitzing through the street. Godfrey and Isaac followed him, keeping up with his speed. "What happened?" Godfrey asked. "It's Rowana. She's under attack." "Direct me," Godfrey ordered as all three of them vanished in a flash of violet. They reappeared hundreds of meters ahead, took a couple of steps and vanished again, even faster than the last time. All three of them, under Godfrey's skill, were like bullets rocketing through the street at a speed that left huge gales higher than buildings. Meanwhile, Rowana dashed into her bedroom where her summon manifested a barrier behind the door. Just then, a white light flashed behind her. Rowana turned, her eyes wide at the sight of a white gate. She hurried toward it, but just as she was about to go through, the gate vanished. Her eyes widened. Just then, a werewolf's hand tore through the door and the barrier. It proceeded to rip the door right off its hinges before lunging at her. Before it could sink its fangs on Rowana, another werewolf's hand tore through the window, grabbed her t-shirt and pulled her out. The glass shattered as she crashed on the asphalt road. She groaned in pain. Werewolves gathered around her, over a dozen of them, hungry for her flesh. But at that moment, the loud sound of three men whose speed broke the sound barrier made the werewolves look up. Isaac shot two webs right at the faces of two werewolves, then shot a web string to another which he yanked toward him. Godfrey blitzed past the werewolf flying toward Isaac, an echo of solstice swords manifesting in his hands as he moved like a sword wraith. All the werewolves around Rowana lost their heads while Snow crouched before her. He exhaled slowly, holding her in his arms while Godfrey moved about, beheading all the werewolves in the vicinity. Isaac webbed those about to escape and dragged them back. The wolves were now the ones being hunted. Fear marred their faces, but Isaac's webs were inescapable, and their necks were promised to meet Godfrey's swords. Snow frowned as he laid eyes on Rowana's wounds. Black and green glimmer billowed out of his body, and he put Rowana in an illusion. She found herself waking up on a soft bed with Snow seated at the bedside, watching her with care. She blinked, looking at her body. There was no wound on her skin. Just then, waves of glimmer scattered and Rowana realized she was on the ground in Snow's arms, but her wounds were completely healed. Godfrey looked at their home. "It seems we're all homeless." "We could stay at my place," Rowana said as she got to her feet with Snow's help. "Where?" Isaac tucked his hands into the pockets of his hoodie. "Welcome to my modest apartment." Rowana beamed as she opened the door and the guys walked in. It was small, a sitting room, kitchen, and a bedroom. "It's a cozy place." Isaac smiled as he brought down his hood and looked around. Rowana switched on the light. "I should have some snacks. I'll be right back." As she left, all three of them sat on the sofas. Snow exhaled heavily, then turned to Isaac. "Mind telling us about that long story?" "Oh, I got possessed by a spider god that was killed by Adam." "Adam, the first summoner," Godfrey raised an eyebrow. "The one and only. He's alive, he's out there, and he's raining havoc on other races rather indiscriminately. Neela came for vengeance, tried to consume my soul space, but it backfired, and we're in some kind of strange summoner and summon relationship. We're still working things out, but I did some things that couldn't be fixed, so your dad and Captain Arian told me to come find you." Isaac said, staring at Godfrey. "I had no idea you would be looking for a place to sleep," he mumbled. Snow grimaced. "That's a harsh experience." "It was at first, but—" Isaac unleashed a Neela from a portal. She wore a white flare skirt seemingly made from silk thread and mana. She also wore a sleeveless top from the same material. It matched her pure white hair. The sight of Neela stunned Godfrey and Snow. When they heard a spider, a woman like Neela was the least expectation they had in mind. Godfrey scoffed, eyeing Isaac. "I must have been way off when I mentioned Lucy." Snow agreed. Neela stared at them coldly, her crimson eyes gleaming dangerously. But she flinched a bit when she sensed the subtle aura emanating from Godfrey, and there was also something feral about Snow. Done showing me off, she hissed at Isaac, who flinched. He swiftly retrieved her. That's a first. She's always eager to attack and steal the memories of people. She was quite subdued around you guys. Well, she's a god. She's not a dumb beast. She knows we're your friends, Snow replied as he leaned against the sofa's backrest. She's weakened now, just a paragon for now. Isaac scratched the back of his head. You have to strengthen her. You have a head start in the next phase of our world. Don't throw it away. Since you guys are joined now, she has to protect you. Your death means hers, so there's nothing to be scared about, he added. Isaac chuckled. She liked the first part but did not like what you said after. As he spoke, Rowana returned with snacks and canned drinks. All of them grabbed one. Snow opened a can and looked at Godfrey. How's Isolde? Isaac was shocked at that question. It could only mean one thing. Isolde was alive. His wide eyes locked on Godfrey, waiting for his reaction. She's alive. Godfrey responded with a nod. He took huge gulps from his canned drink. Who knew what was on Isolde's mind? To be honest, he didn't feel so good. He was usually all right, but seeing Snow with Rowana and then Neela's reveal made him miss his Isolde. It had not even been more than a few hours, but it felt like they had not spoken for days. What was wrong with him? He just prayed this would not affect some activities. Hopefully. She was usually the leading figure in that aspect. Most times his mind hadn't even gone there, but right now, for the first time, he was thinking in that direction, and Isolde wasn't around. Something was wrong with him, and he couldn't even reach her in that domain. It depended on her mood. When she felt like it, she would return. This couldn't be the life of a married man. He was still so young. How's paradise? He threw a question to Isaac just to keep the talk going, but his mind was already far away. After clearing the green gate, Isolde absorbed the core and rose from 26 to 27.2. The gate to the alchemist was now unsealed. Maybe it was time to visit. It was time to be addressed as king. A good while later, everyone went to rest. He lay on the sofa in the sitting room, eyes shut. His soul first appeared in Isolde's chamber. He could only get to the next chamber from here, but his eyes went to her throne and it was empty. Godfrey approached the huge doors. Etched on it were 10 alchemists and tall royal apostles behind each of them. He pushed the door open and walked into the hallway. This was the biggest hallway he had ever seen since he got the castle. The ceiling was arched with candle chandeliers dangling from it. Torches were hung on the walls. It seemed as if the hallway was made for giants. He went straight to the next door. Right before it was a monument. Beyond these doors lies the heart and core of the Golden Order, creators and guardians of the Order. Existences above the Golden Oath, beings enthralled by the Mana Tree's wonders and blessed by its dew. Beyond lies the Mana Tree's failed example, relics of the past, alchemists of the Golden Order. Godfrey paused. That was it, no tear. Taking a deep breath, Godfrey pushed the door open and a bright golden light flooded his eyes. It grew brighter and brighter, engulfing the entire hallway. Godfrey's body on earth vanished, and he found himself standing on the landing of a grand ivory staircase. Godfrey blinked and looked around. He stood before a broken ivory castle. Broken remains of tall knight statues were everywhere. Trees and grasses had grown over the place, but this magnificent structure, abandoned for countless years, still stood the test of time despite looking broken and weathered. It was a grand structure, with several walls, most of which were broken. He could tell this had once been the beating heart of the Pathanis. This was the Golden Order Castle, the real thing. He was in Patan. Godfrey looked up. The huge golden sun built to hover above the castle had fallen and sank halfway through the roof. The clouds were gray. It wasn't completely dark, it wasn't bright either. Godfrey pushed the huge wooden doors inward and stepped into a vast hall with towering pillars. At the end of this incredibly large hall was a high staircase, leading to the top of a dais. There was no throne there, just 10 petrified alchemists and huge royal apostles behind each of them, also petrified. With each step he took, the stone fell off their bodies. When he began to ascend the staircase, the stone on their faces slowly fell off. When Godfrey finally stood at the top of the dais, all the alchemists and the royal apostles were unpetrified. They stood there in all glory. The chief alchemist went on one knee. He wasn't supposed to, but this boy had indeed given the Patan world a second chance. Others joined. Then the royal apostles, esteemed swordmasters, went on their knees, pulling out their swords and planting the tip into the ground. "We greet His Majesty." A week later, Godfrey sat close to the end of the grand staircase of the broken ivory castle, watching 2 royal apostles duel. Both 14 feet tall swordmasters clashed like 2 armies fused into 2 men. The movement of their swords, though they weren't using a strand of mana, made the air ripple violently as it whipped about like wind blades. Their crimson manes tousled fiercely as they clashed, swords sparking from the intensity. Godfrey's eyes narrowed when he saw the earth crack and begin to split just from the clash of strength between the apostles. They were nothing like his generals. Each of them were powerful progenitors, but that wasn't what made them different. The apostles were not fused with any known beast but from the sap of the mana tree. They were the result of the alchemist dabbling into forbidden territory, one of the most perilous, but it created these monsters. They weren't humans. Patans were a variant of the human race, but these apostles had mutated into something different. They were stronger, faster than any other Patan, including those at their peak. They were known to reshape landscapes, break down mountains in a true fight. They could also self-heal, restoring themselves to their peak state, and mana was their food the same way. A plant grew through the aid of sunlight. The royal apostles were the best of the best, messengers of the alchemist. Each of them was a part of their chosen alchemist. The alchemist could speak through them and see through them. Unlike the other knights, they were not truly part of the Golden Order. They were like limbs for the alchemist who created the order. They too were not of the oath. Unfortunately, for this reason Godfrey didn't gain symbiosis from them. Their position in the castle was complex. Technically, the alchemists were the highest-ranking beings in the castle since the unknown king wasn't supposed to be real. However, now he was real, which shook the balance of the castle's true hierarchy. Another reason was the alchemists represented the core mana system of this world. All of them were nourished with the mana tree's dew. They were the chosen of the Patan world, and it unlocked their minds to vast possibilities pertaining to their kind. The dew granted them the ability to create mana-infused implants, and also the capability to extract the full essence of other existences and fuse them into Patan vessels, creating stronger beings without side effects. While summoning Earth's mana system, the alchemist's biomagical anatomy was Patan's mana system. Godfrey's mana system gave him the ability to support another mana system under the context of summoning, meaning both systems were working in his favor. At least now they can create more knights, starting with Victoria. Godfrey smiled. With the alchemists, he couldn't just create knights, he could also bring the others to their full potential. In a way, Godfrey got the forge that produced knights feared across almost all mature worlds working again, meaning he could expand the Golden Order. He might not have gained his throne, but he was already paving the way for a higher title. With a soft grunt, he rose to his feet and stretched his limbs. His eyes gleamed softly at the sight of the forest spreading into the horizon. This was Patan. It looked beautiful even without the sun. Exploring this world would be fun. What if he could rebuild it? This could be his own home, an entire world. That thought alone made Godfrey grin. Isolde would be happy to hear this, when she eventually returned, that is. His expression soured when her face crossed his mind. It's been 7 long days, he grimaced. Snow and Isaac understood where he was after he explained to them. Light was also returning to Earth, and rumors of titled God-tier summoners were flying around. That aside, the number of progenitors had risen drastically. Guilds and the authorities were doing all they could to attract these new apex figures to work for them, while increasing the contract of those already with them. Earth was changing once more. It seemed as if each country wanted to form an association of guilds. In other terms, factions were rising. Godfrey summoned a longsword and pinned it to the staircase. "I've seen enough. I would like to learn by experience this time," Godfrey said as he walked into the field to meet the apostles who had stopped fighting the moment he stood up. Godfrey knew he was before the strongest weapon masters in Patan. They had a special sword style that his generals did not. Learning from them would boost his mastery. These centuries-old royal apostles still saw him as a child, even though he was their king. Earning their respect and reverence was crucial. After all, relationships between summoner and summon had to be nurtured. There were always deadlier threats the stronger he grew, who knew what he would face in the future. Skills gathered now might save his life. Brandishing his longsword, Godfrey stood against a royal apostle. The shadow of the apostle overshadowed him, who couldn't even reach the apostle's waist. Weight, he was probably at the thigh. "I'm 63. I'm pretty tall for a human on Earth, but here it's a different story. Well, being short still has its perks." Godfrey moved, gliding to his left. His fingers tightened around the hilt of the sword as he swung it upward, but to his greatest surprise, the apostle was beside him, his own sword heading for the back of his neck. What? For that size, the apostle was insanely fast. He swiftly switched into Lysander's speed. It looked as if he vanished and reappeared above the apostle, his sword raised high. But the apostle's eyes were already on him. Those golden eyes pierced through the eye-hole of his white helmet, locking on Godfrey. "Impressive. Impressive," both of them said at the same time as their swords clashed. Godfrey somersaulted twice before landing heavily, fierce gale billowing outward the moment his feet touched the grass. "My king, didn't you say you have a lot of questions for us?" Godfrey turned and saw an alchemist close to the bottom of the staircase. His eyes glowed from under the hood, while his hands were joined together below his chest. "We are ready to give you answers. Come this way." Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down.